So we are really fortunate to have Miko with us this evening to talk about Palestine. And the objective of this meeting is really to educate ourselves about the issue of Palestine. Uh, Miko Peled, you are an Israeli author, speaker, and activist, and you are the founder and the president of the Palestine House of Freedom in Washington, D.C. I can see behind you on the wall, Dar al Hurriya, House of Freedom. You are best known for your outspoken views on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. You have written an excellent book called The General Son, which I recommend to read. Miko Peled, you were born in Jerusalem, like a multicultural, multi-ethnic city, but yet you haven't really met Palestinians until later on in your life, and that was outside Palestine. It was in the U.S. You served in the special forces of the Israeli army, and you are also a karate master. In 1997, you lost your niece Smadar in a suicide bombing attack in Jerusalem, and this tragedy was what finally drove you to kind of embark in this journey to discover Palestine and do more activism. In the context of ongoing genocidal campaign today in Gaza and the West Bank, what is the way forward to resisting further ethnic cleansing in Palestine?
Sure. Well, thank you for the introduction. Like you said, I'm now here in Washington, D.C., running this organization that we founded last year called Palestine House of Freedom. So we have a large space here on Capitol Hill. We're just a few blocks away from the U.S. Capitol right here on Pennsylvania Avenue, which is a major thoroughfare in, all the important buildings are on Pennsylvania Avenue. So we have a Palestinian flag and we have the name Palestine House of Freedom here. And we hold events here on a regular basis. We have a YouTube channel. We do a podcast. We call it the Palestine Connect. And we collaborate, of course, with all the other Palestine organizations here in town, and there are many of them. So we do a lot of work together. Of course, I travel and speak, as I always have been doing. And really, the question that you ask is really the key question. How do we support the Palestinian struggle for liberation? This is really, at the end of the day, what it's about. And so what we've done when we created the mission for this organization, we wanted to be unambiguous. And one of the problems that we see with Palestine, with organizations that are Palestine related, is that very often the mission is ambiguous. So what are you for exactly? We know what you're against, but what are you for? We're against occupation, we're against a genocide, but then there's a missing end to the sentence, is not finished. So we decided to begin with the end of the sentence. So our mission as a nonprofit is education, but the objective is to dismantle the apartheid state and have it replaced with a free, democratic Palestine from the river to the sea, so an all of historic Palestine with equal rights. That's the objective. And the way we achieve it is through a very robust interpretation of the word education. So again, through using social media, using events, using all the means that are available to us, engaging with the people that work a few blocks away from here in the U.S. Capitol and so on. But the question is, of course, even if we have the place and even if we have the objective clear and even if we have the mission, now what? We live in a reality, and Washington, D.C. is actually a very interesting city in this regard, because when you walk down the streets, Washington is a city that people walk in a lot and take public transportation, so there are people in the streets. And it's very common to see people wearing kufiyas, very common. And Palestine shirts, it's very, very common to see it. And stickers on the, electric posts and everything. You see Palestine everywhere in Washington, D.C. It's very, very interesting. But in the halls of power, like I said, a few blocks from here in the capital, everyone is decidedly pro-genocide, pro-apartheid, 120%. Like, you can't even have a conversation if you come in with the name Palestine. If your organization has the name Palestine in it, there's no one to talk to, or almost no one to talk to. And you're viewed, of course, as a supporter of terrorism and hate, and that's with them. And so we are faced with an objective that is lofty, an objective that is optimistic and hopeful. And I use the word hope here, purposefully, but seems completely unattainable. When you see the absolute support for the genocide and for the apartheid state, not only in Washington, D.C., you see it in Dublin, you see it in London, you see it in Paris, you see it across Europe and so on. It seems you have to be really certifiably mad to try to change it and fix it. At the same time, if we want to see an end to the killing and suffering and oppression of Palestinians, we have to find a way to change that. And I think as people who live in countries where we can actually vote for our political representatives, then we have an advantage because we can force them out of their jobs. And clearly we're not doing that. And I think the reason it's not because people are not trying, it's because the traditional politics doesn't work for a cause like Palestine. So what's incumbent upon us is to come up with creative strategies to circumvent political, the regular politics, conventional politics, in order to accomplish this goal. Now, Zionists have been working not only here in the United States, but across Europe for at least 100 years, more than 100 years, promoting Zionism, establishing connections with politicians, with the media, with cultural centers. They've been doing a very thorough job of establishing very strong connections. And so today, here in the United States, they even have special non-NGOs that their mission is to take a look at the school textbooks in social studies to make sure that Palestine, Israel, the issue is taught in a way that they approve. And they have special conventions where social studies teachers convene, and so the Zionists are there providing them with curricula and so forth. So they're very thorough. We are coming rather late to the game. And so we have a lot of catching up to do. We've got to figure out the strategy. We've got to figure out how to do it. We've got to raise the funds because you can't do it without funding. We know that. We have to be able to have access, which we don't have, to the halls of power. And unless we have access to those halls of power, we're not going to be able to bring about change, I think. So the task is on us to figure all that out, to figure it out quickly, and bring about the sweeping change that we want to see. And the sweeping change that I believe is important is not expressed necessarily in a particular politician or a particular law or a particular policy even, but a sweeping change where it is no longer acceptable to support Zionism. It is no longer acceptable to support Israel. I remember, I'm old enough to remember that one day it was perfectly acceptable to support apartheid in South Africa. And the next day it wasn't. It was not acceptable anymore. And it was across the board. It had nothing to do with your politics. It had nothing to do with you could have been as racist as you wanted to be. You could not host a South African delegation if you were organizing an event. Whether it's the Olympics, whether it's academic events, whether these are cultural events, whether these are diplomatic or political events, if you invited a South African delegation, you would be penalized. That is the change that we need to see if we want to see the end of the genocide and the destruction of Palestine. That should be the objective, in my opinion. Once we reach that point, then the discussion about dismantling apartheid is not whether or not there's apartheid anymore, but how we dismantle it and how we do it quickly and effectively. That's where we want to be. So we need to have a sweeping change so that we can have a conversation. And then on a parallel track, we need to have a conversation about replacing the apartheid state with a real, free, democratic Palestine with equal rights on all of historic Palestine. So this nonsense about separation and two states is, should be swept off the table into the garbage can of history, because it's never was a solution and it's not a solution, and so on. So that's the kind of change that we need to see, and we need to see it done fast. And the only people that can do it is us. I mean, all of us sitting here. There's nobody else. There's no Messiah. There's no Salahuddin. There's no one's going to come and do it. It's us. We are it. And I say this to audiences everywhere when I speak. This is it. People always expect someone to come and save us. This president, that president, this politician. Forget it. They're not going to do it. They're only going to do it when they're forced to do it. They're only going to do it when there's absolutely no other choice for them. And that reality is up to us to create. No one else is going to do it. Palestinians, bless their heart, are spitting blood, and their own blood is being spilled like it is worthless. And they're paying and they still stand up, and they continue to resist, and their blood is being spilled even more. And other allies in Lebanon and in Yemen, and are trying to resist, trying to support the Palestinians, and are paying with their blood. I'm not suggesting we pick up arms, but I am suggesting that we can do a lot more, and that we should be doing a lot more in mobilizing and organizing and strategizing and making sure that what we do works. And if it doesn't work, we need to change it. We need to do something else. I always recommend to people, there's a wonderful movie that was done about Chile and how the Chileans got rid of Pinochet in the 80s. It's called No. It's a movie that every activist needs to see. Every activist needs to see that movie, I believe, because it's relevant. First of all, it is very relevant to Palestine, but it's also relevant to how stuck we are as activists in our own minds, in our own way of thinking. So again, it's called No. It's an excellent movie. And so that's really, again, like I said, that's incumbent upon us. Now, people always, people are amazed that the world has been silent over the last year and a half or so, seeing this genocide in Gaza unfold. And I hate to remind people that when white people destroy people of color, the world never cares. The West never cares. The West has never, this has been going on for a very long time. In Palestine alone, it's been going on for almost 100 years. And the powers that be, the imperial powers, always gave it their blessing from the very beginning. The blessing to get rid of Palestinians and take and colonize Palestine was there for the Zionists from the very early on. So there's no surprise there that they are continuing to support the genocide, that they continue to support the ethnic cleansing, that they continue to collaborate with the apartheid state. Again, this we should take for granted, because that's how it's been, and that's the nature of Europe when it comes to the lives and the lands and the rights of people of color. So what else can I say? I think that we need to recognize the challenges. We need to make sure that we understand what our objectives are, that we're clear about the objectives, that tolerance to Zionism should be eliminated completely. There should be no tolerance to Zionism, just like we wouldn't have tolerance to any other racist, violent, supremacist ideology. And we should be clear about the objective of dismantling the apartheid state for the benefit of the creation of a real free Palestine on all of historic Palestine with equal rights. And we should be prepared to answer the questions that are inevitably going to come up. Not necessarily by the other side, because I don't really care what they think, but by people who are in the middle who are just not informed. Now, the Zionists have defined pretty much what a free Palestine means, what river to the sea means, what justice means, what intifada means, what uprising means, what resistance means. So they've branded us in a particular light. And that's what the rest of the world knows. They have the access to the media that we don't. They have access to culture that we don't. So that's the reality we live in. When we say a free Palestine, people who are completely not on any side say, yes, but what about the Jews? As though, I'm always perplexed when people ask that question. When we say the Father, they go, yeah, but doesn't that mean terrorism? When we say river to the sea, and on and on and on and on and on. They've done a really good job branding everything. So people who are in the middle, who are just uninformed because they're not informed, it's not their issue. When they ask us these questions, we need to have a quick, decisive response, an unapologetic response as to what these things mean. And then we need to find the resources, and we're doing this here, Palestine House of Freedom. We just got a wonderful donation to start putting ads on bus stops here in the city. People use the public transportation here, people walk a lot. So and the other side is canvassing the bus stops and canvassing billboards here with their story. We are missing in action because it's very, very expensive. So now we're working on a campaign to make our presence known and the presence of the voice of the Palestinian voice known. So we need to be active, seriously active in doing these sorts of things so that the other side gets, the facts. And that's really what it's about. I mean, the other side has all the money, the other side has all the access and so forth, but we have the facts. We have the simple truth about Palestine, the history. We know the history certainly is on our side. The facts are on our side, and the law is on our side too. International law is on our side. The violations of international law. I remember doing an interview with Israeli television once, and we talked about violation of international law, yes and no. I said, Israel doesn't violate international law. Israel is a violation of international law. So of course they engage in genocide and apartheid. They are in the state of Israel is a violation of international law. It's an apartheid state that has been imposed on Palestine by force. It is a violation of international law.
The very foundation of the state of Israel
is a violation of international law, of course.
The very foundation of the state.
Yes, absolutely. So, these are conversations that we need to have. We need to have them with people who are outside the circle. We need to have them more and more as much as possible with politicians and people who work with politicians, because sometimes it's not the politician, but it's the aides, it's the staff, and so on. And we need to gear up for a fight. We need to gear up for a fight. This needs to be number one priority, or it's never going to happen. Because for the other side, this is number one priority, and it has been from the very beginning. They are zealots, and they were zealots from the very beginning, which is why they were so successful. And they had a very clear strategy. So I think when we gear up to get this done, we can get it done. I think Palestine, a free Palestine, a democratic Palestine is definitely possible and achievable. How long it takes, how many Palestinians have to die in the process, that will depend on how quickly we organize and prepare to fight this fight and win.